All right, now we're going to begin a discussion. I may have to do several videos on this one, but it's the how to use pressure in singing. And people say, "Oh, that's a bad word. It puts a pressure on anything." You wouldn't believe the pressures that I encountered among really terrific singers. You think, "My God, how does he do that?" Or she, and they're pressing something somewhere, and that pressure keeps the voice even and gives them the ability to sing high notes and low notes and soft notes and loud. And so pressures are very interesting. Uh, you hear singers doing things like "hello," right? Lawrence Melchior taught me that. So if I'm doing this, "hello, hello," where's the pressure and how much am I using it? Now watch. "Hello, hello." The idea is to create the necessary degree of pressure to give you control of the music you're singing. And of course, ideally, you should have the right voice for this. And then you maintain it and you don't disturb. That's where down bowing. If I down bow, I go, "La." Now I want to take that sound and move it without disturbing. So I go, "La." No, that was supposed to have been legato. I don't know if that's repeated or not, but we can certainly find out how we use pressure. So one way, and that one was, when I sustain, when I do the H, it moves the air out of my back. I'm always breathing down in my lower back, and then I go, ha, and the breath comes out of my lower back. And then when I do the L, what's this? Ha. So I'm not pushing out on it. It responds to what I'm doing. It's reflex. The act that I'm doing, the squeeze that I'm requiring of my body is in my lower ribs in the back, like this. Caruso said that you squeeze, you breathe and expand the ribs wide open or breathe as low as you can in the back, and then you squeeze them to sing. Some other people just say you close them to sing. So the idea is the action of what today I'm calling squeezing, or calling whatever it is that we do that makes it even. That's what we do. Tetracini said it's like leaning a ladder up against the wall. Well, when you do that, the ladder doesn't move; it's held there by gravity. If I lean on the wall, well, like this, it's one thing. If I want to push the wall and push my stomach like that, so then that's pushing, not squeezing. So the idea is to find out which methods that I used to sing with that I know about from great singers. How much squeeze is required? I mean, I learned, for instance, and I'm going to do A, E, O, U inside, behind this. The blue relaxes the tongue and the jaw and everything relaxes. I learned it from Dame Ava Turner, who did the first Trimble. And here we go. I'm going to go. What kind of pressure am I using? See, I call it squeezing, but it's not always squeezing. Sometimes it's much milder than squeeze. It's not really squeeze. So let's just call it pressure. It's really pressure of the breath. And the Italian word that they use has always been appoggio, which means the leaning. And to lean is appoggiare, appoggiare, two P's and two G's, appoggiare. And that is the lean of the breath against the diaphragm. The diaphragm is right here, right? But some singers don't lean there; they lean somewhere else. So let's find out where the leaning pressure is with some of the great singers. I mentioned Melchior, and he went, "Hello." So he's creating a lean, let's call it. He's definitely leaning his breath somewhere, but it has a certain degree of pressure with it. And then we have someone like, always a good example, anybody, like Joan Sutherland. Joan Sutherland breathes up her rectum, And then she sang behind the uvula. So she sang like this. Which way did I lean? First of all, that makes me lean backwards, not forward. So if I lean against the wall and just let my weight hold me against the wall, that's like putting the ladder against the wall, but I'm facing forward. Yeah, I could lean against the wall, but you're never supposed to do this. This is an absolute no-no. So you can practice leaning the wall with the back of your head against the wall. So I'm going to lean my head back and go. I'll use my chair. But because Sutherland had this huge, tremendous air column going all the way up from her rear end, she had all the energy and breath she needed. See, breath does more than just provide you the length of the phrase. It also makes color, makes overtones. Everybody knows the bigger the drum, the bigger the sound. By bigger, I don't mean louder. You can hear a snare drum just fine. But it's shallower. It goes rat-a-tat-tat. A big drum, like a timpani, goes boom, boom, boom. It's a completely different sound. So the bigger the drums that we have, like we have lungs, but if you think of them as drums and you keep over the years developing them, you go from the most famous case was Caruso, who started out as a very light tenorino. He sang Barbara Seville and Elixir of Love and all these really sweet little, very light lyric parts. And his voice turned into a canon over a lifetime. The same thing happened to, Helge Roswanger, who was a Danish tenor, made a fantastic career in Germany. And when he was trying to sing in the beginning, they wouldn't even let him in the church choir. They said his voice is too small. He's a very light tenor, almost he said to me, almost like a young lady's voice. So it was so light and so small. And someone said, do yoga. So he very rapidly got into yoga and did it 3 hours a day. And over the years, his voice got bigger and bigger and bigger, till finally Laurits Melchior, who was a historical singer himself, he said Roswanger had the greatest voice he ever heard. So now think about that. The greatest voice you've ever heard. What happened to his voice? I sang with him in 1969, and he was singing, it was a special operetta-like light opera written just for him. And the idea is he's an old singer who wants to make a comeback. And I was a young, and he was an old singer. I was a young singer already in the business, and he was and I was laughing him off and being sarcastic. Oh, he can't compete with me. I'm young, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden he come out with these incredible tones and high notes. And in real life, his voice was like 20 times bigger than mine and just overwhelmingly fantastic. Really, really, you never heard anything like it. And people are both saying, and Caruso would say, well, Caruso's voice was very broad and very beautiful, a Mediterranean voice, very creamy, and had a sort of mellow color to it all the time. And Roswanger's voice, so every time he sang one of his high notes, it was like lightning was going off inside the theater. So there was just, the energy was just like this all over the theater. So, take your pick, right? Certainly nobody complained about Caruso's voice not having enough energy, and nobody complained about Roswanger's voice not being beautiful enough, but they called, their nicknames were interesting. Well, Roswanger, because you're a lot more nicknames in Germany than you do other places, but and in Germany they called him the Golden Sword. The Golden Sword. And when I heard him out, I listened to some of the rehearsals where he was singing up on the stage, and his voice really was like a golden sword. It would come at you like this, whack, and like just absolutely you feel like it was dedicated just to splitting you in half. You can go on forever talking about voices. The whole idea is, how did Roswanger sing? Because I studied with him for a year and a half. All right, so he would say, he gave me a couple of exercises. One of them was the chimpanzee. So I go, that's all inward, and I'm voicing it, so it's sitting way down low in my pharynx. I'm going, if I sing that way, which lean am I using, and how much pressure is involved? So definitely in the back of my neck. And to maintain that, I must stay there, and it turns into a type of lean in the back of my neck. And Caruso, of all people, said the ah vowel is very far back and low in the throat. And Joan Sutherland said it's behind the uvula. Franco Corelli said that he sang behind the glottal stroke. Well, he read in Caruso's book that if you hear someone singing with a glottal stroke, that means they're singing too far forward in the throat. That's the way he put it. So you're going, ah, 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 ah. It's a very narrow little lean, too. Starts about here and goes like this. Ah, you sing that way, unfortunately. For most people's voices, it will ruin the voice eventually. But Corelli read that, and he thought about that, and he sang behind the glottal stroke. So if I go, no, I'm behind the glottal stroke. Where's my lean? And how much pressure am I using? The pressure varies depending on the weight of your voice. I was always sort of a middle weight. I never had one of those great big monster voices. And those big voices, let me tell you, Bruce Springsteen told me that he did yoga 3 hours every day of his life, 7 days a week, and had done it. When I met him, he'd been doing that for 55 years. So he had a voice like a house. I mean, really, a golden house, a silver, shining, brilliant house. So which way am I leaning, first of all? And how, you might say, how heavy is the ladder? Let's go back to tetracene. You're leaning lateral on the wall. How heavy is the ladder? Is it made of paper, cardboard, lead? How heavy is it? What do I do when I lean? How heavy is this? See? So I'm going to lean. She said, lean it right here on your chest and go, well, how much pressure does this thing make? It's not very heavy, right? What if I do this? Here's something. How about this one? Now, this one really has no weight at all. There's still pressure there. I'm not allowed to let the pressure change. And if I try to play my violin in a downward only stroke with this light connector, I go. Very interesting that Caruso and Toscanini both thought Tetracini had the greatest female voice they ever heard. And Rosa Boncello was a protege of Caruso. It was her bender. And everybody said she had the greatest voice in the world, maybe, right? She said Jose Mardones, the Spanish bass, had the greatest voice. Everybody was always talking about, they asked UC Burling, what's it like to have the world's most beautiful tenor voice? They said, oh, have you never heard of Stefano? So they were always, I guess, afraid, who knows? They probably appreciated the compliment that they've had somebody they liked better, honestly, or I don't know. It doesn't matter. All I want to do is get up and sing and not have problems and be safe and get the notes and not have any problem with them. So you realize one thing you have in all of the leaning results, all the leaning reactions to what you're doing vocally, like, right? Or whatever I'm doing, if I go, the other exercise that Helga Rosfanger taught me was the lip clamp. So I do the, I'm going to do the vowels again. A, E, I, O. So I go, Now it's not humming and it's not an M. It's a lip clamp, and you press the lips together as tight as you can get them, and you go, Now what's happening? Do I have a lean? Do I have pressure? Let's find out. Now, where is that? And how intensely am I leaning? And this is something that every individual singer has to work out by himself almost. If you have a good teacher that knows this stuff, you'll be okay. But your voice is not like my voice. And some people have voices like houses, like Rosfanger or Leonard Warren or and Melchior. Melchior's voice was, he always used, Allah, Allah. So he'd sing, I feel that he's the Father. Except it was like 20 times bigger. And I come into the room to have a lesson with him. And he said, hello, young man, how are you today? And the whole room was like, you know. And he had a head about this wide. I have pictures of him. We'd look in the mirror a lot while he was singing. He said, but look in the mirror and watch him while I did it. And his head was about this wide. I wear a 7 5/8 hat, right? And I don't know what he wore, about a 20. I don't know. Anyway, he weighed I forgot now, 320 pounds. He was 6'6". He had a chest that went out to here, and his back was here. You're talking about big people. You know, Caruso had learned the role of Otello, the most dramatic tenor part in the entire Italian repertoire. And he learned it, and he had all the performance dates established in his schedule, and rehearsed it, and learned it, and was ready to sing it. And then he heard Leo Slezak. Apparently, Leo Slezak was 6'9" and weighed about 400 pounds. He was a giant. He wasn't just tall. He was like Melchior, this size. And when Caruso heard Leo Slezak sing Otello, Caruso canceled everything. He didn't sing it. He didn't want anybody to say that that you compare him to Slezak. Because Slezak's voice, in German, they called him a voice phenomenon. His voice was unbelievable. He could sing high notes, he sang lyric parts. He sang Mozart. He did everything. Sang lieder, gave concerts of songs, and this, you know, what do you do? And when somebody comes along once in a while, and, you know, forget it. I won like every competition I entered when I was young. And then I went to Europe, and sure enough, I heard about a tenor who had won the big Sicilian concert in Catania, right? And I said, oh, gosh, Jay's singing, and I was in Zurich. He said, he's singing tonight in Zurich. You can hear him sing Rigoletto. I said, fantastic. So I went to the theater, I listened to him, and I sat there, and I thought, well, number 2 isn't bad. I don't mind being number 2. That's pretty darn high. I'll think I'll be able to stay busy and still be a singer, and I'll be number 2 after this young man. His name was Aragal. Jaume Aragal. They called him Giacomo Aragal. The real name was Jaume. So then, at some point, that must have been 6 months later, I heard Jose Carreras sing in Barcelona, and he did Luisa Miller. And I said, well, number 3 is not bad. I'll start along at number 3. I'd better go back to Germany, where I'll be the number 1 young singer. Like, no, you have a lot of problems. Some of these pressures that we use to control the voice are exhausting. I mean, they will use you up, so you have to train yourself to swim, and ideally you play a wind instrument or something like that. Beniamino Gigli played saxophone for 30 years, and Fritz Wunderlich played French horn for 30 years. Franco Coelho and Nellie Melba and Joan Sutherland were all ocean swimmers. Kirsten Flogstad was a competitive swimmer. You see, it just keeps going down the line. Giovanni Martinelli, one of the boys like a house, by the way. I studied with him a little bit for a while, and he played clarinet. Now, Martinelli was interesting, talking to him, and he said, I said, you sing everything without any legato. You're an Italian. Why don't you sing legato? Because he was singing, ha, 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 ha. He sang, big, huge sound. I said, why don't you sing legato? He said, I was hired here, he said, to take the place of Caruso. Caruso died. But nobody can take the place of Caruso. Caruso was the most phenomenal singer who ever lived. He had the most beautiful voice, the most beautiful mezzo voce, the most beautiful legato, the most, you name it. The one area I could compete, or at least then maybe even or close to him, was volume. I had a big voice. So I decided I'm going to concentrate. I'm going to do nothing but sing like a big voice. So how do you do it? He hammered his voice. They're called martellati, hammered notes. So he sang like that. Ah! So I said, shall I do that too? He said, well, try it. So he went, so I went, he said, you see, it's big. I said, what about if the conductor insists that I do it more legato, or somebody wants me to do it sing? He said, you got to decide you want to compete. You want to get up and sing. I said, I don't know. I said, well, why can't you just sing the first note that way? Why do you have to sing every note? Why don't I just sing the first note and do the rest of it legato in that mode? He said, I cannot believe you come here, 20-year-old boy. You're going to tell me I'm 77-year-old. I've been singing here all of my life since I was 19. I've been at the opera for 33 years. And you're going to come in and tell me how to sing. I said, please, sir, don't misunderstood. He said, I'm going to try it. So he went, forma divina. And he liked it, and he kept doing it from then on. Oh, the point being, though, that he was using a type of lean based on a contact, and the contact was how much pressure. How much pressure was he using? If I go, ah, and I start like that, and I'm going to maintain that legato, ah, how much pressure do I have to lean? How heavy is my ladder? See? So when I use leans, and I use these various sides, here's a lean, I can use this one. How about that one? Right? Let's say I go. Can I do it lighter? Can I do it lighter? Die Weisheitslehre dieser Knaben sei wie mir ins Herz gegraben. What do I do about that? What do I do? How do I decide how much weight to use? How much pressure? How much lean? We usually don't talk of lean in terms of amount, but you could, if you learn to think that way, you can say this is the big lean and that's the little lean. This is the heavy lean. That's the light lean. A lot of people understand the word pressure. So I'm going to ask him, Matti Battistini, the greatest baritone that ever lived, who was a superstar in Russia, that's in St. Petersburg. He was the Tsar's pet. Apparently painted him by filling his shoes with diamonds or something. And he was the baritone of emperors, the emperor of baritones. And they asked him, tell me, how do you sing? What do you think about you singing? He said, I press my chest. Well, that's pretty simple, isn't it? How much you press your chest and how heavy is your ladder? He and Tetrasini weren't telling us how heavy the pressure was. And today I'm trying to discuss a little bit about pressure. If this weighs a certain amount, how much weight am I pressing against my chest? See? If I could do something like this. How about this one? Shall I use that one or not? See? The idea is that we are supposed to, by the time we get ready to sing professionally, we're supposed to have worked all this out and found out which lean we use and what degree of pressure do we use. If I have these lists, I have all kinds of lists of that I was given some of this information and I stole a lot of this information from a great singer, because I was in a Metropolitan Opera School called the Catherine School, and I was there from 1958 to 1963, and everybody was walking through there. So you have all kinds of things. I have breath stop is a word that's all over the place. Everybody uses breath stops. What does a breath stop mean? It means you don't leak air. So if I'm doing this sort of thing, right? Now I'm going to lean my breath, let's say on my chest, and how much pressure do I need to not leak? Ready? What do you think I should, how could I improve that? Can I do anything about it? Because that's just nothing left but my natural voice at a very easy amount of pressure, and I can sustain that, and I get my high C's that way with that pressure. So how do I do it then? All I do is not leak. So if I go, pa, now I'm going to stop that. That's leaky. I'm going to stop the breath from moving. Pa, all right. Do I use this pa to decide how much pressure I'm going to use to create my lean? Or can I do less? Can I do this? Pa. Now, I made a video the other day talking about babies. I don't remember, but I probably said what I believe, which is when we cry, we don't cry like babies. I tend to go cry. If I cry, I go like that. My voice goes up here in this resonance. It's like we return instinctively or something to the more childlike voice, and we don't cry very much, you know. But if we do cry or so, we try to hide and stifle the sobbing. No one knows what we're doing here, and you go, that's why I hide it. But the point is, how much pressure would I use if I were using a crying method? And babies go, ah, 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 ah. It sounds like they're coughing rather than crying. We don't call it crying, but we do. Of course, when we say your baby's, oh yeah, the baby's crying. But if we were doing that, we would think, wait a minute, I'm coughing when I do that. So it's a little confusing, but I'm going to try to cough the way a baby does when the baby's crying. Ah, ah, ah. Listen to them. Ah. When they laugh, they go, ha, 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 ha. If I laugh and I use the baby's laugh, I get what I call the cough, the baby's cough. I get, see? So the idea is, now, let's take the next step. How much pressure am I using? Am I using a pressure method? It's really a way of pressing. And of course, I'm right at home with Matteo Battistini, all these people that talked about leaning on the chest. Pavarotti said that he did a miniature cough on his navel. All right, so that's a normal cough. Let's do a miniature cough. Feel that? So I go, but anyway, I talked about a lot of that in that other video. And what I'm really interested in, I'm trying to pass over today, is get people to start to consider how much pressure do they use when they sing. Because there are a lot of various techniques you can use. I mean, I knew a singer who blew his nose all the time. And he'd do this. All right. How much pressure did I use? Was that a lean? I don't know if that could be defined as lean, because I'm blowing my nose, and he did too. And I see him sometimes on the stage, he sort of turn away from the audience and go, and remind himself. Franco Corelli used to do this all the time. Pulled his lip down. So did Schwarzkopf, the German soprano. Timaldi did it. Franco Corelli did it. Was the king of it, and they do this all the time. Now, if I do that, I still got my voice placed up here. Am I leaning? Is the breath being leaned? If so, how much pressure am I using? See? So every technique requires some way to maintain the posture of the breath so you can sing. You don't agree. I'd rather not do what Martinelli did. Is a phenomenal singer with an incredible voice, and he had a huge, long career. But he did hammer, and the word is martellare, and that's what he did all the time. He sang. Well, certainly the voice stays healthy. It doesn't strain the voice at all to do that. And he sang, when I met him, he was 77. So he sang forever that way. It didn't damage the voice at all because it's all diaphragmatic. That means all the torture and work and punishment is being taken down here. And these are big muscles. The diaphragm is the biggest muscle in your body. If you learn to use it, you will never need to use these. But then we had someone like Ava Turner, who did the first tenor note. She was a British woman. She was 74 when I met her. And she demonstrated, and her voice was big as a barn, like a tenor note voice you would expect it to be. And how did she sing? She said, now imagine you're asleep, and your throat is completely relaxed all the way down. And you breathe down here. Like a baby, this is her lecture. Like a baby, when a baby breathes in, the stomach goes out. And when they exhale, the stomach goes in. But when they laugh or cry, the process reverses. And of course, I had 4 children. I was writing there, checking all this, but it's true. When my babies would cry, their stomachs would go in when they breathe and go out when they sang. So who do we know, what singer do we know to describe that as his breathing method? Enrico Caruso in his book. He said, he draw the abdomen in and fill up your lower back, and the back works like a bellows. It opens up. When you start to sing, it squeezes together, and the abdomen, he does a contrary motion. You go the opposite direction. Now, Claudio Muzio and Tito Schiavo both sighed. So if I sigh, I go, now what am I doing? Do I have a lean, and do I have pressure to keep it there? Not enough pressure. So it went off on me. So let me try again. So after a while, you learn how much pressure you need with your individual muscles and strength and the resistance of your vocal cords. Vocal cords, when you sing high notes, they get longer and thinner and close tighter, and they create more resistance. And their resistance has to be equalized in the body, or something will happen. Your singers go, what is that? That is releasing the pressure. I'm still leaning, but now my pressure is not sufficient, and my voice goes off and breaks. And I love it in Spain. In Spanish, they call it the rooster crows. But tenors quack all the time. So what do? People try to give more something to not quack. Caruso was the most notorious quacker in history, and he never, ever did anything about it except keep working on his breathing. He was a free diver, did a lot of diving in the Bay of Naples. I think over time he developed so much breath strength that he didn't have the problem anymore. The quacking problem disappeared. Genie would sob deliberately. Not in the beginning of his career. He got famous. His voice was phenomenal. That's Beniamino Genie, the one who played the saxophone for 30 years. But he would deliberately sob. I did that in Italy. They just loved it. Got great reviews for it. When I went back north, I said, what do you do? You can't do that. Sounds horrible. So the idea that one of the exercises that men can do very well is a falsetto attachment. Now, if I go, where was my lean? There's my point of attachment. There it is. Very, very easy to identify. Then I must figure out how much pressure do I need to hold that attachment of my lean, of my breath lean, right? They even have names for that in the older type. It was il punto d'appoggio, the point of leaning. And they had a punto d'attacco too, a point of attachment of the falsetto. Now, our beloved female singers must do the opposite because they don't sing in that register the way we do. They sing in the head register. So they do this. Oh, and they go down and under. When you do that, where's your lean? Oh, where is that? How much pressure do I need to maintain that? See? So that's I think I may just be beating it too hard, and I think I've probably discussed some of this in some other videos along the way. But I wanted to hit very specifically today the word pressure. I mean, I'm 87 years old. I'll be 87 here in 10 days, March 15th. 87 years old. Now, what I do about my body, I was just, those of you who know me know that I disappeared for a while, and I didn't sing a note for 7 months. I was in the hospital, and then I was in the rehab. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't do anything. I was helping. They had to teach me how to walk again. It was a big deal. My heart stopped a couple of times. So I'm glad to be back. I'm still going, oh, right? The idea, though, if I'm going to attach my falsetto, or you're a lady, you're going to attach your head voice to, you have to go below the location of the chest voice. Oh, and then go under it and go, oh. Now, the third law of motion says every action has an opposite equal reaction. So that means if I want my voice to go up here and come up and resonate in my head, I've got to go down for it to go up. So now we're talking about directional pressure. Now I'm directing the pressure downward and going, oh. My favorite male singer I ever heard was U.C. Gerling. And when I asked, I listened to him too. And I said, why do I sing? And he said, well, you know, and he didn't know. He was a very natural singer. He knew what he was talking about. And I said, well, do you do anything? What do you want? Well, I breathe a lot. He said, I breathe a lot. You know, I go, oh. My breath is down there. That's one thing. And if I do that, if I attach my voice to that, all right, I'm down there now. Now, can I turn it into a lean, first of all? Yes. How much pressure do I need to stay down there? And then Caruso said in his book that the mezza voce, this really soft singing, requires a double breath support. Holy cow! So then we have to. He didn't define breath support, so we don't know exactly what he was doing. But I think that if I knew every detail of Caruso's technique, his vocal technique, I still wouldn't be able to do it because he was stronger than any singer that ever lived. He had more breath power. And he talks about the massive power of the respiration required for great singing. So this is one thing that we're talking about. I've got a whole list of these things. Maybe I'll go through them. And I got a whole, somewhere here, I've got a whole list of those techniques that people use that require not just lean, but pressure. Let's say I'm going to sing up here. So now it's directional again. I'm pressing up against the top of my skull enough to maintain the attachment of the lean of the breath. The breath goes like this. I'm doing this. Imagine I'm way up here and I go, and I drop it on my head. But you can do, right? I mean, I sang with a lot of big singers, and one of the most impressive singers I ever sang, well, there were two. There was Birgit Nielsen and a woman named Leonie Rieseneck, and both of them had monster voices. Rieseneck's voice was this way, great big round voice, and Nielsen's voice was like the laser beam from God's throne. It was a huge but beautiful way of singing. And both of them said they sang that way. And then, because they sang mostly in German repertoire, they had to learn not to use the chest register. So both of them had relatively weak low notes and relatively weak low middle, I should say, middle register notes, but the low ones, and they were nothing like the volume. When they went up, the voices were like this. Riesenek's voice was a huge round ball, like really like a house, like no, and Birger Nilsson's voice was this unbelievable thrusting type wham, like some kind of a ray beam from outer space. It was unbelievable. But both of them did not use the chest voice, whereas the Italians did. And some of the singers that were trained in the Italian style, the old style, they did. You listen to Nellie Melba make a recording. She's got a recording of Voi che sapete from Marriage of Figaro. And she sings like this. Voi che sapete che cos'è amore? What is she doing, do you think? Why is she clucking like an old chicken? Because what it did, it put the voice up here in the head, and the whole world, including Rosa Ponselle, said, probably the most beautiful voice in the world. They called her the Blue Diamond because her voice was cold and full of incredible color and shine and brilliance. And they called Rosa Poncelle's voice the Red Ruby of passion. Because her voice, and she did listen. If you listen to recordings alive, you'll hear Rosa Ponselle going, in questi momenti. And there was a woman named Celestina Buoninsegna that they used to justify that because Buoninsegna was so incredibly famous. She was the most famous soprano in Italy during those years when Ponselle was the superstar at the Metropolitan Opera. And she would cluck every note. And, you hear a record of her and you think, whoa, too much. But they did it because it threw the head voice up with a long air column underneath it. So if I play a clarinet and I play the mouthpiece, it just squeaks. So I put it in a clarinet and I cut it in half. I only got half an air column. It's better than it was, but it's still not the great sound of the clarinet. I need the whole air column and I need its whole size width. And you think about how the piccolo is small and can be heard, but it's a very thin, high sound. The flute is bigger. It's a longer tube. The clarinet, again, is a little bit bigger, and the alto sax is bigger, and the tenor sax is even bigger. And they have the saxophone that they put on the floor and blow like this and play it on the floor. The violin makes one sound with its air box, and the viola has a bigger air box. And they skipped the viola d'amore, which was sort of in between the viola and the cello, and they went to the cello, which has a much bigger box until they get a bass. Well, what happens with those air boxes increasing their size is you get more tone. Now, what about those bigger strings on those instruments and the smaller strings? Do you play with the same amount of pressure all the time on the string? Do you give the same amount of lip involvement to change pitch on a trombone? I played tuba, and then when I got in the Army, I played the bugle. What a difference! The tuba was, and the bugle was. So this all becomes, I find, very, very vague, and the way you learn it is by practicing very carefully with somebody that knows what they're doing and gets you what you. First of all, ladies, you have to go, oh, everything's got to be loose, completely dropped. You should have heard what's her name, the first turn, Dame Ava Turner. You should have heard it. She said you have to have the feeling that you could pass your hand through here and there's nothing there. It's an invisible, non-existent thing that is not there. Your resonance is up here, and your breath and your voice are down below in your body, and there's nothing here, which is interesting. The whole Garcia school taught that, and she studied with Garcia's, first assistant, they called him, Dan Rotham. And so did Clara Butt, if you know that name. Clara Butt had the biggest contralto voice in history. Sir Thomas Beecham said, on a clear day, you can hear Madame Butt. of the continent. So the idea, these are monster voices, but why? Because they were singing, but Clara was about 6'5", and she had a huge body like that, so she went all the way down to the bottom. That's what she was taught by Rotham, and the throat is completely relaxed like this. So if I let go of my throat and I just drop my air way down the pelvic floor, and I go, I will sound that different because I always try to sing in my throat loose. My breath is way down now, sitting in my abdomen in a complete relaxed state. Everything drops. So it's really a sigh method or Caruso's contrary motion method. I pull it in. When I start taking a breath, I go, let it out. That means there's no action here. The reaction to nothing down low of letting go, the reaction is nothing up here. How much pressure do I need? You know what I'm using? Gravity. When I lean on the wall, I use gravity. And you realize when Tetracine's talking about leaning the ladder against the wall, she's talking about gravity. Gravity has to be enough pressure to be able to sing pretty much, and if you have to use more pressure than that, be very careful, because you may be singing what the Germans call out of Fach. You're getting outside of what your voice and your breathing and your strength and your age, all those things, they all play a role as to what you can sing safely. And if you sit in a chair and go, it's like the voice, like gravity takes my voice down. So how much pressure am I using now? See? I'm not standing up. I'm letting gravity bounce me, and I'm using a little bit more than just sitting here. I just sit here and do it, I go, if I bounce, I can increase it. But I still can't sing any bigger than that. I never could be a real Helden tenor, and I couldn't imitate one of my teachers that I loved, which is Lawrence Melchior. I came on there with, I said, he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm imitating you. He said, but you cannot imitate me. You are a lyric tenor. You do not have the heavy voice like I have. He said, to imitate me, you must have a voice like me. I didn't. So anyway, let's think about a little bit where you lean your breath, and then how much pressure do you need to keep it there. Like Mario Delmonico he probably had the biggest male voice in the world in his career. And he used to tell me that he stopped his breath right here. He'd exhale and then stop it right there. Right here, what's called the sternal notch. It's that hole right there. And he did that. It was the Otello. Right? And they used to tell him he had a megaphone built into his throat. And the megaphone, by the way, works this way. This way. This is not the way you use the megaphone. A lot of people are trying to open the throat and spread the throat and say, yawn. And if you yawn and then try to put the voice through a little hole, what do you think? It's not the way it's designed to work. We're not designed that way. We have to create that with muscles and artificiality. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to do anything but breathe and make everything get loose and soft like I'm asleep at night. I'm going to go. Then I go. Then it becomes a musical, artistic question. Do you want to just sing big all the time? That was a criticism of Delmonico. I worked with him also for about 6 months. And he was showing me all this stuff here. And he said, you're young. Maybe you should wait a few years before you do this. I think so, like forever. But anyway, the one I love Richard Tucker's voice. Richard Tucker used to stop his breath right here, and he'd go, it's always under control. He was the best Verdi tenor I ever heard. He never canceled. He was totally dependable for all those years that he sang lead roles at the Metropolitan Opera. He and Zenka Milanoff, and she was the greatest female singer I ever heard. And he was right up next to Björling's voice was lighter and more lyric and very sweet and very pretty. So you sort of, it depends on what they were singing. Tucker was the guy you hire first. He was the tenor's tenor. He could sing anything and sing it great. And he just simply he was what we call a breath stopper. I think I've done videos on breath stops too. And the breath is coming like that, and you stop it somewhere. Delmonico did it here, and Tucker did it on his upper lip. So I go, like that. See? So you have to decide where you're going to breathe and where you're going to lean and make your attachment, and then how much pressure do you need, first of all, and are you using to keep it in place? If I sing up here, it's a different sound. If I drop it way down in my lower abdomen, I go, is the point here to sing it with a bigger tone all the time? What do I want? Believe me, if you'd heard Richard Tucker, you would have loved it. You would have loved it. And then Alfredo Kraus comes along and goes, when he was 73, I was great friends with him, and he died in 73, and he had a stack of contracts on his desk about that deep. At that age, he was just a marvelous technical singer who could sing anything, anytime. And he was a little guy, it's like half my size, and he had a high lyric tenor voice, but he stopped his breath on the tip of his nose. Isn't that interesting? Because he was in that school that was endowed by Francesco Tamagno, who had the biggest voice in history. He's the one that sang that Verdi wrote Otello for. And he endowed the school, and the only condition he made for the endowment was the kids must all learn my vocal technique. And his vocal technique to sing here with the biggest voice in the world. So if I go right here, how much pressure do I need to keep my voice on the tip of my nose? See? All right, so we'll carry on. Maybe I'll do another video about pressure with different instigators, with different ways of singing that people use, okay? All right, thank you very much.